The fortress beneath the ice. Hitler's secret Antarctic refuge. Chapter 1. February 6, 1939. Princess Martha Coast. The Dornier Wall flying boat circles one last time over the ice shelf before turning north toward the Schwabenland. Pilot Richardheinrich Schirmacher has just made the final aerial survey flight of the German Antarctic expedition. Below him, 600,000 square kilometers of uncharted territory now bears German names: the Mühlig-Hoffmann Mountains, the Voltat Massif, the Crowell Mountains. 16,000 photographs document every ridge, every valley, every feature of this frozen wilderness that Germany has claimed as Neuschwabenland, New Swabia. Schirmacher doesn't know he's just discovered something that will become the foundation of the greatest Antarctic mystery in history. During his reconnaissance, he spotted an ice-free oasis, a patch of bare rock and freshwater lakes in the midst of the continental ice sheet. The Schirmacher Oasis, as it will be named, shows thermal activity, warm water, geothermal heat, the kind of environment where structures could be built, where people could survive, where a base could operate year-round without resupply. Captain Alfred Richer, Expedition Commander, records the discovery in his log. The Schwabenland departs Antarctic waters that evening, her mission accomplished. Germany has mapped territory, established territorial markers, aluminum darts embossed with swastikas dropped from aircraft at key waypoints, and identified potential sites for future whaling stations. The expedition returns to Hamburg on April 11, 1939, 4 months before Germany invades Poland. 2 follow-up expeditions are scheduled for 1939, 1940, and 1940-1941. Both will investigate suitable whaling grounds and extend Germany's territorial claims. The second expedition will also assess the feasibility of naval bases from which Germany could control the South Atlantic Indian Ocean and Drake Passage. The war cancels both expeditions, but the maps remain. The photographs remain. The knowledge of the Schirmacher Oasis remains. And according to what will emerge decades later, something else remains. Base 211, the secret fortress that Nazi Germany allegedly built in the mountains of Neuschwabenland during World War II, 250 kilometers inland from the coast, carved into living rock beneath the ice, sustained by geothermal heat, connected to the sea by submarine tunnels. The base that supposedly survived the Reich's defeat, the base where high-ranking Nazis, elite SS units, and Germany's most brilliant scientists retreated in 1945 to continue their work in exile. The base that Allied forces discovered and tried desperately to destroy. The base that may still exist beneath Antarctic ice waiting. Chapter 2. May 1945. The Submarines. U-530 surfaces in the Mar del Plata harbor, Argentina, on July 10, 1945, 10 weeks after Germany's unconditional surrender. The submarine's commander, 25-year-old Oberleutnant zur See Otto Wermuth, orders his crew to destroy all documents, the ship's log, and the Enigma machine before Argentine authorities board. When interrogated, Wermuth claims U-530 has been at sea since mid-April, that he only learned of Germany's surrender from radio broadcasts, that he chose to sail to Argentina rather than surrender to Allied forces. The Argentine Navy finds this suspicious. The submarine's provisions suggest a longer voyage than Wermuth admits. The crew appears remarkably well-rested for men who've supposedly been at sea for months in cramped conditions. Most damning, the submarine's deck gun has been removed, creating additional storage space. For what? 6 weeks later, on August 17, 1945, U-977 arrives in Mar del Plata. Commander Heinz Schaefer tells a similar story. His boat has been at sea since early May. He's surrendering to Argentina to avoid Soviet capture. Like U-530, his crew destroyed all documents. Like U-530, his submarine shows signs of modifications inconsistent with standard operations. The timing is extraordinary. 2 German submarines appear in South American waters months after the war ended, both with destroyed records, both with crews suspiciously healthy, both arriving at the same Argentine port. Interrogations by American and British intelligence officers find inconsistencies in the commander's accounts. Where were these submarines really operating? What cargo might they have carried? Why Argentina specifically? In 1952, Heinz Schaefer publishes his memoir, U-977, 66 Days Underwater. He insists the boat carried no secret passengers, no Nazi gold, no classified documents. He describes a harrowing 2-month submerged voyage across the Atlantic to escape Allied patrols. But questions persist. Could U-boats travel to Antarctica? The answer is technically yes. German submarines had the range and endurance for such voyages, though it would push their capabilities to the limit. Rumors begin immediately. Ladislas Szabo, an Argentine writer, publishes Hitler est vivant in 1947, claiming both submarines were part of a convoy that evacuated Hitler-Eva Braun, Martin Bormann, and other high-ranking Nazis to a secret Antarctic base called New Berchtesgaden, constructed between 1938 and 1945. The base, Szabo writes, was established during the Schwabenland expedition and expanded throughout the war via submarine deliveries of equipment, supplies, and personnel. Szabo provides no evidence. No documentation links U-530 or U-977 to Antarctica. Neither submarine appears in any convoy records. The manifests show no capacity for the cargo or passengers Szabo describes. German naval archives contain no references to Antarctic operations beyond the 1938-1939 Schwabenland expedition. But the seed is planted. 2 submarines with destroyed records, plus a German Antarctic expedition, plus persistent rumors of Nazi gold shipments to South America, a secret base beneath Antarctic ice where the Reich survives in exile. The mathematics of conspiracy don't require evidence. They only require plausibility and imagination. Chapter 3, 1946, Operation Highjump. Admiral Richard E. Byrd's task force departs Norfolk, Virginia on December 2, 1946, with the largest Antarctic expedition ever assembled. 13 ships, 33 aircraft, 4,700 men. The USS Philippine Sea, an aircraft carrier, the USS Senate, a submarine, USCGC Northwind, an icebreaker, attack transport supply ships, seaplane tenders, a complete naval armada bearing down on the Antarctic coast in the middle of the southern summer. The official mission Operation Highjump will establish Little America 4 base on the Ross Ice Shelf, conduct extensive aerial photography of unmapped regions, train personnel for cold weather operations, and test equipment for potential Arctic warfare against the Soviet Union. The operation is classified confidential, not secret, but not publicly announced either. 11 journalists accompany the expedition, including distinguished war correspondent Lee Van Atta. The task force arrives at the Ross Ice Shelf on January 15, 1947. They begin construction of Little America 4 immediately. Aerial surveys commence. Over the next 6 weeks, aircraft photograph hundreds of thousands of square kilometers, systematically mapping coastline and interior regions never before documented. The expeditions fly over Queen Maud Land, the area that includes Neuschwabenland, but spend most of their time in the Ross Sea region on the opposite side of the continent. On December 30th, 1946, disaster strikes. A Martin PBM-5 Mariner flying boat designated George 1 crashes on Thurston Island during a blizzard, killing 3 crew members: Ensign Maxwell A. Lopez, Arm 1 Wendell K. Henderson, and Arm 1 Frederick W. Williams. 6 others are rescued 13 days later. On January 21, 1947, civilian expedition member Vance N. Woodall dies. These are the only fatalities during Highjump. On February 23, 1947, Admiral Byrd orders the expedition to begin withdrawal. The early approach of Antarctic winter threatens to trap ships in pack ice. The operation officially ends in late February, having lasted approximately 2.5 months, shorter than the planned 6-month duration, but well within expected parameters for Antarctic operations in the Ross Sea region, where winter arrives unpredictably. Lee Van Atta files a dispatch on March 5, 1947, published in El Mercurio, a Chilean newspaper. The article quotes Admiral Byrd: "It is necessary for the USA to take defensive actions against enemy air fighters which come from the polar regions." The quote appears in the context of discussing post-war security and the shrinking world, where polar regions can no longer guarantee isolation. It's a statement about future military strategy, about the importance of Arctic defense against potential Soviet bombers. Van Atta's article makes no mention of Nazi bases' secret weapons or combat in Antarctica, but the quote will be endlessly misinterpreted and recontextualized over the following decades. Because here's what conspiracy theorists see: the largest military expedition in Antarctic history, an operation that ends prematurely, an admiral warning about aerial threats from polar regions, aircraft losses during the mission, all classified confidential. The conclusion writes itself. Highjump was sent to destroy the Nazi Antarctic base at Neuschwabenland. American forces encountered advanced German aircraft, flying saucers, developed from captured alien technology. A battle occurred. Multiple U.S. aircraft were shot down. Byrd's forces were repulsed. The fleet withdrew in defeat. None of this happened, but it doesn't need to have happened. It just needs to be plausible enough that people who want to believe it can construct a narrative from fragments of truth, misunderstood quotes, and deliberate fabrications. Chapter 4. The Base That Never Was. Let's examine what it would have taken to build Base 211. The Schwabenland expedition arrived in Antarctica on January 19, 1939. They departed February 6, 1939. Total time in Antarctic waters, 18 days. The ship never traveled more than a few kilometers inland. The crew conducted all exploration via aerial survey. No one spent more than a few hours on the ice. The expedition had no motorized land transport equipment beyond what could be carried aboard the Dornier flying boats. To construct a secret base 250 kilometers inland from the coast across crevassed ice shelf terrain that even modern expeditions find treacherous, the Germans would need. Transport vehicles capable of traversing Antarctic ice. Germany in 1939 had no such vehicles tested for polar conditions. The Schwabenland carried nothing of the kind. Construction equipment, building materials, supplies for hundreds or thousands of people, fuel, food, medical equipment, radio gear, weapons, ammunition, tools, machinery. Tons of cargo that would require multiple trips across 250 kilometers of unmapped glacier. Personnel experienced in Antarctic construction, Germany had virtually no such expertise. The Schwabenland expedition was the Reich's first serious Antarctic venture. By comparison, Ernest Shackleton, Robert Falcon Scott, and Roald Amundsen, experienced polar explorers with decades of Arctic and Antarctic operations, typically took 2 weeks just to construct small bases near the coast with prefabricated materials and experienced crews. Time the Schwabenland expedition had 18 days total. Even operating with impossible efficiency, transporting supplies 250 kilometers inland, and constructing habitable structures in that time frame is physically impossible. Yet, according to the mythology, not only did Germany build Base 211 during the Schwabenland expedition, they expanded it throughout the war via submarine supply runs. U-boats supposedly transported prefabricated base sections, personnel, scientific equipment, and supplies across 5,000 miles of open ocean to one of the most remote and hostile environments on Earth. German U-boats in World War II could remain submerged for approximately 24 hours before needing to surface to run diesel engines and recharge batteries. The voyage from Germany to Antarctica is approximately 12,000 kilometers weeks at sea, much of it through waters patrolled by Allied forces. Any U-boat attempting such a voyage would need to surface regularly, exposing itself to detection and attack. None of Germany's operational U-boats were designed for polar operations. They had no ice strengthening, no cold weather modifications, no equipment for navigating through pack ice or operating in Antarctic waters. Moreover, where are the records? Germany was obsessive about documentation. Every military operation, every supply shipment, every construction project was meticulously recorded. The archives captured by Allied forces at war's end contained detailed information about V-2 rockets, jet aircraft development, submarine operations, chemical weapons programs, nuclear research, virtually every classified German military project. There is nothing about Antarctic base construction. No supply manifests, no personnel assignments, no construction schedules, no communications with any base in Antarctica. The absence of evidence is overwhelming. But conspiracy theorists interpret this absence as proof of how thoroughly the evidence was destroyed, how complete the cover-up, how desperate the Allies were to suppress the truth. Chapter 5. Operation Tabarin. Britain's Operation Tabarin adds another layer to the mythology. Beginning in February 1944, Britain established a series of small bases along the Antarctic Peninsula and surrounding islands under the pretext of monitoring German naval activity. The official purpose: deny Germany potential anchorages for commerce raiders and auxiliary cruisers, gather intelligence on enemy shipping, and reassert British territorial claims against competing claims from Argentina and Chile. The reality was even more mundane. Britain was worried about Argentine and Chilean territorial ambitions in Antarctica, not German military operations. The bases designated A through H averaged 5 occupants, each typically composed of scientists and support staff with no military personnel beyond the small rotating crews. These bases were positioned along the Antarctic Peninsula, approximately 1,500 miles from Queen Maud Land, where Neuschwabenland was located. Conspiracy theorists point to Operation Tabarin as proof that Britain knew about the German Antarctic base and was attempting to counter it. Some versions of the story claim British SAS commandos conducted raids against Base 211, that elite troops were deployed specifically to destroy or neutralize the German presence. The evidence contradicts this entirely. Lieutenant Colonel Blair Paddy Mayne, a legendary SAS officer, did visit Antarctica, but not until January 1946, months after the war ended, and his visit was part of civilian research expeditions unrelated to military operations. Mayne's diary and personal papers, carefully researched by historian Hamish Ross, show he was in the Falkland Islands, working on scientific surveys, not conducting commando raids on secret Nazi bases. Operation Tabarin's bases were positioned to monitor the Drake Passage and Antarctic Peninsula approaches logical positions for observing ship traffic between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. They were entirely wrong for monitoring or attacking Neuschwabenland, which was on the opposite side of the continent. If Britain genuinely believed Germany had a base in Queen Maud Land, they would have positioned surveillance and response assets accordingly. They didn't. But once again, the myth doesn't require these details. It only requires that Operation Tabarin existed, that it was initially classified, and that its true purposes can be reinterpreted through a conspiratorial lens. Chapter 6. 1958, Operation Argus. The final evidence for the Nazi Antarctic base comes from Operation Argus. In August and September 1958, the United States detonated 3 nuclear weapons at high altitude over the South Atlantic Ocean. The explosions occurred between 38.5 and 49.5 degrees south latitude, at altitudes between 2,280 and 3,500 kilometers above Earth's surface, approximately 3,000 kilometers north of Antarctica. Operation Argus was a highly classified scientific experiment designed to test whether nuclear explosions in space could create artificial radiation belts in Earth's magnetosphere, potentially useful for disrupting enemy radar and satellite communications during the Cold War. The tests were part of nuclear effects research conducted during the late 1950s, before atmospheric nuclear testing was banned. Conspiracy theorists interpret Argus differently. The United States used nuclear weapons to finally destroy Base 211 after conventional military assaults failed during Operation Highjump. The high-altitude detonations were actually aimed at underground Antarctic installations. The scientific explanation is a cover story for an act of war against the surviving Nazi regime in exile. The problems with this interpretation are numerous. The detonations occurred 2,000-plus kilometers north of Neuschwabenland, far too distant to affect any ground installations in Queen Maud Land. High-altitude nuclear explosions produce electromagnetic pulse effects and radiation, but negligible blast damage at ground level thousands of kilometers away. Underground facilities would be completely unaffected by high-altitude nuclear detonations. If the goal was to destroy buried bases, the weapons would need to be ground-burst directly over the target sites not detonated in the magnetosphere thousands of miles away. Operation Argus was a scientific test documented extensively in declassified archives. The research produced valuable data about magnetospheric physics, radiation belt formation, and nuclear effects in space, exactly what the official explanation claimed. But again, conspiracy thinking doesn't require logical consistency. It requires only that nuclear weapons were used in proximity to Antarctica during a classified operation, which can then be linked retroactively to earlier mysteries involving U-boats Admiral Byrd and the Schwabenland expedition. Chapter 7. The Evidence That Exists. Here's what actually happened. The Schwabenland expedition surveyed Antarctic coastline and interior regions, took aerial photographs, made territorial claims, and departed after 18 days. No base was constructed. The expedition had neither the time, equipment, nor expertise to build permanent installations 250 kilometers inland. 2 German U-boats surrendered in Argentina in mid-1945 after extended voyages following Germany's defeat. Both commanders destroyed records to prevent their capture by Soviet forces. Neither submarine traveled to Antarctica. No evidence links them to any convoy or secret mission beyond their commanders' stated intentions to avoid Soviet captivity. Operation Highjump was a U.S. Navy training and research expedition designed to prepare for potential Arctic warfare against the Soviet Union. The operation conducted extensive aerial photography, established a research base, and withdrew when Antarctic winter approached. 1 aircraft crashed during a blizzard. No combat occurred. No German forces were encountered. Operation Tabarin established British scientific bases along the Antarctic Peninsula to reassert territorial claims against Argentina and Chile. No military operations targeted German installations. No SAS raids occurred. Operation Argus tested nuclear weapons effects in Earth's magnetosphere. The experiments were conducted thousands of kilometers from Antarctica and had nothing to do with destroying underground bases. Norway's research station Troll, established in 1990 in Queen Maud Land, the heart of the region where Base 211 supposedly exists, has found no evidence of German construction. The Schirmacher Oasis now hosts India's Maitri Station and Russia's Novolazarevskaya Station. Both facilities have operated for decades with no discoveries of buried Nazi installations. Satellite imagery covers every square kilometer of Antarctica. Ground-penetrating radar has surveyed ice sheets and bedrock beneath. Multiple nations have conducted extensive scientific research across the continent for 70 years. If a massive underground complex existed in Neuschwabenland, we would have found it. The absence of evidence is not evidence of absence except when evidence should exist and doesn't. A base housing hundreds or thousands of people, operating continuously for decades, supplied by submarines throughout World War II and beyond, expanded with sophisticated equipment and weapons systems, such a facility would leave traces. Radio communications, supply caches, refuse disposal, thermal signatures, construction debris. Personnel remains. Equipment failures. Something. There is nothing. Chapter 8. Why the myth survives. Base 211 persists because it fulfills narrative needs that facts cannot satisfy. For neo-Nazis and Reich apologists, the Antarctic base represents hope. Germany didn't truly lose. The Führer escaped. The Reich survives in exile. The Fourth Reich will emerge when the time is right. It's a fantasy that allows believers to avoid confronting the totality of Nazi Germany's moral, military, and ideological collapse. For conspiracy theorists, it provides a framework connecting multiple mysterious events. U-boat surrenders in Argentina. Admiral Byrd's warnings about polar threats, classified military operations, nuclear tests in remote locations. The pattern seems too significant to be coincidence, which means there must be hidden connections, which means governments are suppressing the truth. For popular culture, it's simply irresistible storytelling. Secret Nazi bases make excellent fiction. They appear in video games, alternative history novels, films like Iron Sky, television series exploring ancient mysteries. The imagery is powerful: swastika banners in ice caverns, submarines surfacing through pack ice, flying saucers emerging from polar mountains. It's adventure fiction grounded in just enough historical fact to seem plausible. But the myth also serves a darker purpose. As writer Colin Summerhays noted in his comprehensive 2007 academic paper, Hitler's Antarctic Base, the Myth and the Reality. The Nazi Antarctic base story distracts from actual history. It transforms the Third Reich from perpetrators of industrial genocide into fascinating, enigmatic figures who possessed secret knowledge and advanced technology. It shifts focus from what Germany actually did, systematic murder of millions, to fantastical achievements they never accomplished. The mythology rehabilitates Nazi Germany by depicting them as worthy adversaries who nearly achieved victory through technological superiority rather than as criminals whose ideology and actions were fundamentally evil. It suggests that if only they'd had more time, if only their secret weapons had been deployed earlier, if only they'd evacuated to Antarctica successfully, they might have won. This is seductive to people who want to believe in Aryan superiority, ancient wisdom, or lost civilizations. Ernst Zundel, who propagated much of the Nazi Antarctic mythology through his books and newsletters in the 1970s, was primarily a Holocaust denier who used UFO stories as a gateway to more extreme propaganda. His admitted goal was not to document history, but to make Nazi Germany seem interesting and powerful enough that people would question established narratives about the Holocaust. Chapter 9. Antarctica Today. Modern Antarctica hosts 70 permanent research stations operated by 29 different countries. Scientists from around the world conduct research on climate geology, astronomy, biology, and atmospheric physics. The continent is governed by the Antarctic Treaty System, which designates Antarctica as a scientific preserve, prohibits military activities, and suspends territorial claims. Thousands of researchers live and work on the continent year-round. Queen Maud Land, the region that includes Neuschwabenland, is particularly well studied. Norway operates Troll Station. Germany operates Neumayer Station 3rd, a modern research facility in the exact area where Base 211 supposedly exists. If underground Nazi installations were present, German scientists working at their own country's Antarctic station would have found them. They haven't, because there's nothing to find. The Schirmacher Oasis, discovered by the Schwabenland expedition and cited as the perfect location for a hidden base due to its ice-free conditions and geothermal activity, now hosts 2 major research stations that have operated for decades. The oasis has been surveyed, mapped, and studied extensively. No evidence of German wartime construction exists. Satellite remote sensing covers the entire continent. Ice-penetrating radar can detect subsurface structures, voids, and anomalies beneath kilometers of ice. If vast underground complexes existed, modern technology would have revealed them. It hasn't because they don't exist. Yet the myth persists. YouTube videos with millions of views claim the U.S. military discovered alien technology at Nazi Antarctic bases. Social media posts insist that expeditions have been turned back by unknown forces protecting the region. Documentaries on fringe cable channels present the Antarctic base as established fact, interviewing researchers who have never published peer-reviewed work or produced credible evidence. In 2016, a viral TikTok narrative claimed Operation Highjump discovered an underground jungle, crystal cities, and Nazi flying saucers. The story spread rapidly because it combined multiple conspiracy theories into one compelling narrative. The fact that it was entirely fiction didn't slow its propagation. Millions of people viewed and shared the content before fact-checkers could debunk it. This is how modern myths function in the digital age. They don't require evidence, they require engagement. As long as the story is entertaining, as long as it provides satisfying answers to complex questions, as long as it confirms existing biases or offers escape from mundane reality, it will spread regardless of truth. Chapter 10. The Fortress That Never Was. Base 211 doesn't exist beneath Antarctic ice. It never existed. The Schwabenland expedition surveyed coastline from the air and departed after 18 days. No base was built. U-530 and U-977 surrendered in Argentina after extended voyages avoiding Allied capture. Neither went to Antarctica. Operation Highjump trained American forces for cold weather operations and conducted aerial surveys. No combat occurred. Operation Argus tested nuclear weapons effects in Earth's magnetosphere. No underground bases were destroyed. The evidence is overwhelming because the evidence is absent. Germany kept meticulous records. The Allies captured those records. They contain no references to Antarctic base construction. German U-boat logs show no Antarctica missions. Interrogations of submarine commanders reveal no secret convoys. Operation Highjump's extensive documentation describes training exercises and research, not military confrontations. Every claim about Base 211 traces back to sources with no credibility. Ladislas Szabo's 1947 speculative book with no evidence, Ernst Zündel's admitted 1970s hoax designed to promote Holocaust denial, fringe writers building on earlier fabrications, documentaries that present fiction as mystery. But here's what's true. Antarctica is mysterious. It's the most remote continent on Earth, covered by ice sheets kilometers thick, experiencing temperatures that can drop below 80-degree sea ice battered by winds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. It's a place where humans struggle to survive, even with modern technology. It's easy to imagine secrets buried beneath that ice because Antarctica itself seems alien and unknowable. Germany did send an expedition there in 1938-1939. That's documented fact. 2 German submarines did surrender in Argentina with destroyed records. That's documented fact. Operation Highjump was a large military expedition that operated in Antarctica. That's documented fact. The conspiracy theory takes these facts and builds fiction around them, filling the gaps with imagination and presenting the result as hidden history. And because Antarctica is so remote, so difficult to access, so extreme in its conditions, it's nearly impossible to definitively prove the negative, to demonstrate with absolute certainty that no hidden base could possibly exist somewhere beneath the millions of square kilometers of ice. But absence of proof is not proof of presence. The burden of evidence falls on those making extraordinary claims, not on skeptics to disprove them. And after 75 years of Antarctic research involving thousands of scientists from dozens of nations after satellite surveys, covering every square meter of the continent after ground-penetrating radar, mapping the bedrock beneath the ice after construction of permanent research stations, including several in Queen Maud Land itself. After all of that, if Base 211 existed, we would have found it. We haven't found it because it isn't there. The fortress beneath the ice is a myth. A compelling myth, an entertaining myth, a myth that serves various ideological purposes for those who propagate it. But still a myth. Adolf Hitler died in his Berlin bunker on April 30th, 1945. He did not escape to Antarctica. The Reich collapsed and was divided among the victorious Allies. No Fourth Reich waits beneath polar ice. No secret weapons are being developed in hidden caverns. No submarines ferry supplies to a base that doesn't exist. Antarctica guards many secrets, ancient climate records, trapped in ice cores, meteorites, that tell the history of the solar system, extremophile organisms that survive in conditions thought impossible for life. These are real mysteries worth investigating. The secret Nazi base is not one of them. It's a ghost story, nothing more. A story we tell ourselves about hidden wonders and terrible powers lurking at the edge of the world. A story that says more about our need for mystery than about any historical reality. The ice keeps its real secrets, the fake ones we invented ourselves.